Okay, well, thank you. Welcome everyone to this global opening of the Human Rights Month of September, of the Female Wave of Change. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ingun Bol. I'm the founder of the Female Wave of Change and the chairperson of the board. And today your host on this human rights event. And today when I was preparing this event, I was going through what is going on online on human rights and seeing everything, the declaration, and going through these different things. And I thought, well, this is so simple. This is so simple. If we could all just behave like it's written there, it's so simple. This is so basic and so human. So I was wondering, where did it go wrong? What happened? And what can we do now to change it? So really would love to hear your stories and your opinion. The first part, it will be about your stories. And the second part will be really talking about how can we as Female Wave of Change, as women, use our feminine values, our feminine energy to really create that better world. Just some information, and that's on screen right now. During the webinar, all microphones will be muted. Only the microphone of the speaker is unmuted. Otherwise, we get all kinds of background noise. So please be aware that your microphone is muted. Please use the chat box if you have any questions. Only speakers use their camera. We don't have that many people right now, so it is okay. And the event will be recorded and used online. So we record it, and we will upload it on YouTube. So if you have any objections, then well, that is your problem right now, because then you have to log out or at least put your screen on black. Okay, I see that Micheal has just arrived. Welcome.
Hello.
Hi. And Shad has arrived, so we're really getting onto speed, and there's only one person right now we're missing. So I hope that she will arrive soon. Okay, well, welcome. And I've just been chatting with some of you. Hi, Angela, it's good to see you as well. So many people who, and Maya, good to see you. So it's good to see this amazing group of people here right now on this very important topic. So yes, human rights. Female Wave of Change really wanted to focus more on areas where we can contribute to create this better world. And one of the first topics that came up was human rights, because we do believe this is very important. And also, so many of the people that are working with us together with the Female Wave of Change on our platform are very committed to human rights issues. So that's why we thought this is where we are going to start. So first part, it will be about sharing your stories. And I have asked Tebello to start. You have a 5-minute introduction. So Tebello is one of our ambassadors. She is the ambassador for the African continent, and right now also still working hard in South Africa to build the organization over there. So Tebello, the floor is yours. You have to unmute.
Unmute myself.
Yes, good.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. My name is Tebello Mokhema, as Ingun has indicated. I'm the ambassador for Female Wave of Change in South Africa and in Africa. It's my honor and pleasure to be participating in this first global event of the Female Wave of Change, where we're especially focusing on the important topic of human rights. I'm honored to be leading the process of expanding the organization here in our continent. So what are we seeing here in Africa with regards to human rights. We see in various communities in the world that are working hard towards a more inclusive world that embraces feminine energy and feminine values. This world that recognizes the voice of females, both young and old, because we can no longer suppress them or we can no longer ignore them. Recently in South Africa, we witnessed women partaking in the total shutdown movement, which was the first ever national movement, well, in my time, of women saying enough is enough when it comes to gender-based violence. We're seeing more children and women that are no longer sitting back when their rights have been violated. Women that are willing to forego their careers, which is certainly so, but it is a reality, willing to forego their careers in a corporate environment that does not protect them from sexual harassment. But you know what's even more interesting is that we're also seeing men that are standing up and are saying, not in my name, as they stand against women abuse, as they stand against the rights of the women not being respected. In Kenya, we've seen women standing as well and exercising their rights to partake in the political structures in their communities. Within our movement of Female Wave of Change, we have women in that country who are taking a stand to be part of political structures in their communities so that the voices of the women can be represented in the political structures. Because the women in that country believe that if the political changes are going to take place, we as women need to be in those offices, we need to be in those parliamentary structures, and our voices need to be heard. Recently in Zimbabwe, as you know, we've had elections as well that have taken place. And what's even wonderful is that now 30% of the cabinet in Zimbabwe constitutes of women. This is really a big movement for one of the countries in our region. And if I know anything about the Zimbabwean women, is that their voices are surely going to be vocal and they're going to be heard. On the 25th of August, 2018, we celebrated women's rights under the banner of Female Wave of Change in South Africa. Our theme for that event was Women's Rights are Human Rights. And we had a number of women that participated and were highlighting the work that they're doing in their communities, in the country, to ensure that indeed everybody understands that women's rights are human rights. So as we continue in today's session, talking about what is happening in the various countries, what is happening globally in ensuring that we recognize the rights of women, I hope that we take courage to realize that the female wave of change is certainly happening to ensure that the rights of women are entrenched, they are heard, they are exercised, and they are recognized. Thanks, Ingun.
Wow, thank you. Thank you very much, Tebello. You've already seen a lot happening in South Africa, and the event on the 25th, that was really very empowering with a lot of very strong speakers, and really love to be there in the room. You know, that is really when you see global things happening, that when you join forces and really create that global setting, then you know, the step, I think it's smaller to really be aware of what is happening. Okay, thank you very much. I would like to ask Mom Angie to be the next speaker, to introduce herself, because she was also one of the speakers at the South Africa event. And a very impressive background as a commissioner for human rights in South Africa and responsible for the children's rights. So you probably have a lot more to share. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Am I unmuted?
Yes, you are.
Good afternoon. As I've been introduced, my name is Angie Makwetla. Now, I work for the South African Human Rights Commission, which is a national institution for the promotion and protection of human rights. Now, we are 8 commissioners and 2 women, and I am the only one who is not really a lawyer. One of the only ones, yes, because I am a social worker. So I have had to hit the ground running. I have had to learn a lot. And in the meetings, I have to remind everyone that, hold on, I'm not a lawyer. Please don't use Latin and don't speak legalese, because I really need to understand what is going on. Now, being responsible for children's rights, I have come to realize that child rights are intertwined with the rights of their mothers. Because in one of our African languages, we always say that the mother is the one that holds the knife by the sharp end. So the mother will do anything for her children. My other focus area now is migration. So I look after the rights of refugees and of migrants. And again, children are directly affected. Now, the human rights situation in South Africa, in other words, what do I see happening in the world, in my country, or in my community, is that there's an alarming rate at which human rights are being violated on a daily basis. There are soaring levels of poverty. Now, South Africa is one of the most unequal countries in the world, and we know that. And we have a lot of work to do in order to undo the levels of poverty. There's also a lot of unemployment. But what I find very comforting is the new political will. Right now, there is a lot happening around hearings into corruption. So anybody that has been involved in corruption in our country, I am certain does not sleep at night. Because we know that the universe does not allow dishonesty, and if one has been dishonest, they will be found out. Because, you know, I always say that if one says one of your values is integrity, it means doing right even when no one is looking. And if you have done right all your life, of course you will sleep easy. So our President Cyril Ramaphosa has instituted a commission of inquiry into corruption. Now, despite the strength of South Africa's financial sector, which remains a big contributor to our economy, there are stark inequalities prevalent in South Africa. There are inequalities that came out of the historical structures. In other words, the wealth accumulation still favors a few to the detriment of the majority. And that is why I said, if we are going to be the female wave of change, we must be prepared to do a lot of work. But as I said, even the day when I was one of the speakers during the South African Women's Month, what I believe is that as women, and unfortunately, the majority of families in South Africa are led by women. So as women, we have a lot of work to do to empower both the boy child and the girl child. We have to empower the boys so that we can overcome this violence against women. Gender-based violence is very, very serious in our country. We also have to empower the girl child so that she knows when to say no and when not to choose the wrong partner. And as women as well, we have to be very, very cognizant and aware of the language that we use when we talk to our children. We have to empower the girl child to be able to walk away when a relationship is not working. Right now, I am busy on a book on femicide, the killing of women by their intimate partners, because it has happened in my family. It concerns me, and I want to ensure that I leave a legacy where the young people, particularly in my own family, because once I've empowered my own little circle of influence, it goes into the community, it goes into society, and then we will have the real female wave of change in South Africa. Now, according to research, which was published last year by the Center for the Study of Violence and Reconciliation, in 2017, 1 in 5 women older than 18 has experienced physical violence, and 3 women die at the hands of their partner every day. Now, we cannot ignore that statistic. And we cannot say, as South Africa, we cannot keep saying we have the best constitution in the world, we have the best laws in parts of the world, because in most parts of the world you don't even have the types of laws that we have. But unless those laws are implemented, and unless we teach our children their rights, women know their rights, then those laws are not doing us any good. Now, there is another sector of society that really concerns me, and that is a child with disabilities. Children with disabilities, women with disabilities, in fact, people with disabilities from all sectors their rights are being violated on a daily basis. We need to be aware of that. Now, fortunately, within the South African Human Rights Commission, we have a commissioner that looks after disabilities. But of course, we have to work together. Now, annually, how am I doing time-wise?
Terrible.
Okay, so I stop there.
No, the hard thing is, it's so interesting. So I would love to hear more you speak, but you will have more time, in the second part. So please keep everything that you want to say, because there's already so much now on the table that if we want to talk about this, it's really great. Thank you very, very much. We will hear more from you in the second half. Okay, there's one practical thing. If within Zoom, you have the option to have all these small pictures, or you can change it into speaker settings so that the one who speaks, you have them big on screen. So I think that's, for most of them, is a little bit better. So I would like to go to our next speaker, and I would like to introduce Narges. I'm doing this completely randomly. There's no who is coming when. So I would like to introduce Narges from Vancouver to introduce herself and let us know what you are experiencing.
Tiny little screen.
Yes, unmuted. Okay.
Okay, awesome. Hi, everyone. My name is Narges. I'm from beautiful Vancouver, British Columbia in Canada, and I'm so excited to be here with all of you talking about this very important topic. So I'm an award-winning entrepreneur, international speaker, best-selling author, but my relationship and my awareness of human rights really goes back to when I was in university about 30 years ago, when I was introduced to Amnesty International. And I don't think Ingun knows this, but I actually was their first women's information officer. Back then, the student body actually elected me at the tender age of 18 or 19, and I would travel all over the UK, stayed in bed and breakfast, and go to trade shows and talk about specifically human rights abuses against women. That was the first year, 30 years ago, that Amnesty International, I remember, launched that campaign, specifically focusing on human rights abuses against women. And so that became something I only became aware of because of reading about the amazing work and research that they do, and I still support that organization. Now, that was my view of human rights from far away, the distant angle, what political organizations do. But it's really changed over the years because now I'm actually on the board of directors for an amazing local organization. So it's gone from wide angle to really narrow and focused. And I'm vice chair of the board for Dixon Transition Society. And what we do is we help women with a continuum of care, women and their children who are fleeing from domestic violence. And the first time you tour a women's shelter, an emergency shelter, all of a sudden you realize the intimacy, the personal nature of women's rights and human rights. You realize, as I did, that without shelter, without somewhere safe to live and to raise your children, without being able to send them to school safely and have education and food and the basic things, that you cannot thrive, you cannot survive. And this has become, this is why I think that human rights are so important, and why the phrase, I love that I'm hearing it, women's rights are human rights. I was shocked the first time I went to the shelter, seeing how many children there were, how many babies there were, how when women run with their children, they run with nothing. They have nothing. So when they arrive at a shelter, they really have to if you can imagine running with absolutely nothing and having to rebuild your life completely from scratch, and the resilience and the strength and the determination that these women and their children have is just something that overwhelms me when you talk to them, and they're so powerful and they're so strong. I truly believe that every human being has the right to these basic things. You need shelter, you need food, you need education, and you need to be safe and in a place that is empowering. And that's where we get involved on local level, but I think governments and business organizations and everyone has such an important role to play. But I think if you only see human rights from above, like I used to, from the political angle, you never realize how intimate and personal it is. And I think working with Dixon has really given me that ability to do that and carried me full circle. So I'm still fighting for the same causes I did when I was at university. I remember I locked myself in a cage at the student union building to raise money. Oh my God, I was completely crazy. But that was 30. I'm still an activist now, but it's on a more local level. And what I love about Ingun, your organization, and Female Wave of Change is it also now gives me the ability to do it again on a global level and be able to see it from up close and from far away, which I think we all need to. We need to see the impact that human rights has when we don't have it on individual lives, on individual families. And I agree with the other speakers I've heard so far. It is so much about children. The biggest impact I had when I walked around the shelter for the first time was seeing all the children. It was just completely overwhelming, seeing them play and seeing them doing well, but realizing that when women don't have human rights, it's their children who suffer. It's the next generation of leaders. And so we need to empower them. And that's why this is so important to me. And I'm very proud to be here.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, we really wanted that also, that local organization to be represented here, because, you know, we talk about this big picture, but, you know, there's locally, there's so much to do. And I love that about your organization. They're really getting things done. And that's very important. And the things that you mentioned, yeah, I was writing in my post today on Facebook. You know, you think you will see these human rights, the declaration, and then you feel like, you know, what is it that we really want? We want a roof over our head, food over the on the table. You want education. You want to be safe. You know, all these things that are very important. And I would like to share a little bit of a story. And I know she's here, and I'm not going to mention who it is. But someone of our own organization, she had to flee her country with her kids, you know, because it's a very masculine, very patriarchal organization. and things happened. Very successful entrepreneur, but lost everything because she's not allowed to own anything. She's not allowed to own her company, not her house, not even her children. So, it's so close. It is so close. And, it's so important for people to be safe and have all the basic things in life. Yes. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Narges. I would really like to go to Shad in Pakistan. It's so amazing that we have all these people from all over the world. Shad, please. Wait, I have to. Yes, you're unmuted.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Ingun, for doing all this. I'm so happy that we are here today. This is such a powerful event today, that having all these women across the world and listening to their stories is so powerful, especially for a person like me and sitting in Pakistan. So yes, I would like to introduce myself to the other sisters here. My name is Shad Begum. I am actually a women's rights activist. I was 16 when I started my work for women and girls in Pakistan. I was just in my school, and my father motivated me to join his organization and to help him in connecting with women and girls in the small villages. So I started that time, and with the passage of time, we realized that in our country, especially the region I belong to, we don't have women representation in the forums where we need to have women, and that was one of the reasons that the women's situation is still not that better for in the region we are working. So with that realization, we established the first women NGO, the not-for-profit organization in that area. So we started work, and for the last 23 years, we are working on the ground. We're now much focusing on youth and women for their political and economic empowerment. I am a Shoup fellow as well from Pakistan, and I'm a Kgame fellow as well, and I'm the female Waves of Change ambassador in Pakistan as well. And this is a very great platform for me to interact with women and to listen to their stories and share the experiences and to learn from them. So being here and sharing these things with you, that the situation of the human rights not even in Pakistan, around the world, is not satisfactory. There are things like we are going more in conflicts, and the world is, the violence is spreading everywhere, and the wars are increasing. So we're thinking that on the contrary, the knowledge is increasing, the technology is actually, the inventions and the technology is increasing. But on the other hand, the human rights situation is not satisfactory. Even this is going worse. But the good thing is that now we are getting connected. Like today, we women are here, we are sharing the stories with each other. So I see hope in this thing, that the human rights situation is somehow, we are influencing the things, we are talking about the policies, we are raising the issues by joining hand around the world with like-minded organizations and networks. And this is how then we are becoming somehow successful. So when I say successful, so I would like to share the stories with you, despite having all these challenges and the problems on the ground. The region I'm working in, we're still fighting for a very basic, basic rights, even like I would say right to vote. So being a woman, in majority of the areas in Pakistan, women are fighting to vote. Though the Pakistan is a country that was having a women prime minister, being a Muslim country in the world for the first time. We have women, like the 33% women representing us in the parliament and everywhere. But when it comes to the decision making, for having equal share and the resources, so there actually women are not given those rights and those actually I would say the rights to exercise their freedom, the political rights. So, but with the passage of time, we have many organizations, and even we are working on the ground. So we have seen the shift. And when I see the shift, so I would say, like for example, recent in the general elections, for the first time, women turnout was amazing. because of lots of campaigns, because of lots of efforts, and because of lots of like advocacy and legislation, now this was made possible that women came out. And when the women came out, despite all the hurdles and the challenges, even the bans from even the progressive leadership and political parties, the women came out, and that was the message to everyone in this country, that women of this country are aware and they want to exercise their right to vote. So this time the turnout was great, and we women are very happy with that. And another milestone we achieved was that for the first time in Pakistan history, that women, they run for the public office on the general seats, 5% general seats. This was not initially in Pakistan, like women were not allowed to contest. They were allowed, but actually this was not the practice actually. So they had to allocate the reserve, some quota in the general seats. So this was for the first time that political party had to allocate general seats to women, and women went for elections. Though a lot of women, like a big number of women, they couldn't win, just few came, they won the elections. But I would say the success is that even when these women went on the ground and they ran their campaign very successfully door to door, so that was a success for us, because in the areas where people are thinking that politics are main business, so women going there asking for vote and convincing a male to vote them, that is a big change for us in Pakistan. And I would say like the resilience now I see, not even in women, in everyone in our country, because of course, because of the social media providing access to everyone to speak about their issues. So initially we were also having the many things, many problems, like, domestic violence and honor killing and all these things. But initially there were few women and few men speaking about these things. But now every day we see very common people speaking up for these issues, standing up for these issues. And I see hope in that. The only thing we need to know that we need to do is that now to organize these people and let them help to have a platform and to speak up for their rights strategically, not like to speak one day and then tomorrow just to forget what we have done yesterday. So that is the collaboration we are building, and I am happy that Female Waves of Change is another example for us, that we all are going to collaborate our efforts through Female Waves of Change, and we are going to invite and ask so many people to join. And here I would not forget to mention those men standing with us. Like I would say, of course, like my father. You see, Malala, her father was the man who was supporting her in her early age, and now she is a world leader. So we need progressive men like Zawdi, and we need progressive men who they were speaking up for all, and we need to include them. And I'm happy that Female Waves of Change is already realizing this need, and they're going to ask, and already there are so many men, they're going to join us in the Women Voice Circle. So with this, I'll just end and hope for the best.
Okay, thank you very much, Shad. It's so great to see what you do also on social media, because with everything that you do there, it is so great to follow of what is going on in your country and what you're doing, and it's really great. And I know last time that we spoke one-on-one, that you asked if your husband could join or speak out, once at the platform of Female Wave of Change, because he does feel that men need to be involved and to speak out. Mm-hmm. And thank you very much. Okay, talking about men, I would like to ask Micheal to speak. You have a great background in human rights and all kinds of issues, so I'm not going to even start talking about it. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ingun, and thank you for having me. It's my first kind of interaction with your great organization.
Can we see you, please?
Oh,
okay. You just turned off your camera.
I did.
Yes, there you are. We love to see you. Okay, wait. Something is happening now. Okay. Now you can speak. Now we can see and hear you.
Yes, my first time to use Zoom, so it's a little bit tricky here. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, here we go. So yeah, I was just going to commend you for your great work, and I feel very comfortable as the only man in this forum because I was raised by strong women, not least of which was my mother, who was a very big campaigner for human rights here in Canada, especially in the Ukrainian community. Now, I am a what they call a global affairs analyst. I contribute opinion to CNN.com, and I'm a regular on BBC World, CNN, and Al Jazeera. And I must say I feel extremely blessed having these platforms to work through because I can pretty much pick the topics that I speak about. So, for example, in the past month or so, I wrote about the horrific bombing of children in Yemen. I've written about how mental health issues among aid workers around the world, this sort of thing. So it's amazing. I feel very blessed to have such a platform. And then also, just as an aside, and then this may feed into a recommendation later on what your organization may be able to do. But I'm currently working on a book on smartphone and social media addiction, which is pretty much a worldwide phenomenon. Now, basically, my career has been divided into two pillars. One has been the journalism pillar, worked in many different countries around the world, and also as a humanitarian aid worker. So in the humanitarian and security sphere, I've served as a spokesperson for UNICEF in many country offices and also in many disasters around the world. And my longest period of service for UNICEF was in the West Bank and Gaza, where I don't have to probably remind any of you where children and women's rights are constantly under assault. It's a very, very tough place, not only to be a woman, not only to be a mother, but also especially to be a child. And I'm glad some colleagues have highlighted the real importance of guaranteeing rights to children. Also, a lot of my career obviously has been focused on that women and children. I worked as a spokesperson for the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe and Ukraine after the 2014 forceful annexation of Crimea. And in that time, I worked a lot in the occupied territories where, again, women's and children's rights are constantly under assault. Bombing of schools, laying of landmines. Eastern Ukraine now is one of the most mined areas of the world. And you can imagine the difficulty that creates for children to go back and forth to school every day. Now, I also must say that I had the kind of concept of human rights seeped into me very, very early on as a child, almost from the day I was born, because my parents were Ukrainian community activists here in Canada. At the time, much of Eastern Europe was still part of the Soviet Union. There were thousands of political prisoners who were sent to the Gulag simply for speaking out. And many of those political prisoners, they don't get, for some reason, as much publicity as the men do, but many of them were female political prisoners. So we spent a lot of time in front of the Soviet embassy protesting. And also when I was a student leader here in Canada, we spent much of our resources on speaking out on those who have no voice. And then as a journalist, I mean, a lot of people say, why do you go into journalism? It's such a dangerous career. Well, my main thing there was to be able to have a platform where I could shine light in the dark corners of democracy, to shine light on injustices to individuals, to groups of people, to communities, and also corruption, which we do have even here in Canada, perhaps a bit more subtle, but we do have it. So for example, I spent a lot of time covering stories about, for example, the forced deportation of Vietnamese refugees from Hong Kong, and as well as the aftermath of that story, their harsh treatment in places like Malaysia and Indonesia and other places they were detained. And then I also covered a lot about manipulation of Canada's immigration system by wealthy Hong Kong tycoons, which eventually led to, I think, a tightening of requirements here in Canada for wealthy immigrants coming into the country. And then I also have to say that in the course of my reporting, I've also spent time on the human rights and the dignity of the individual. And I remember, for example, covering a story once as a junior reporter of a homeless man in Toronto who had some kind of mental issues or disabilities. A doctor was called to advise the police what to do with him. And what do you know, he advised that force be used to extract this man, which ended up very, very badly. I wrote about that story, and I was responsible for that doctor actually losing his license for giving such terrible advice to law enforcement authorities on how to deal with an individual. Now, I just wanted to make a few main points, and then, because I'm running out of time, I think, and then I'll make some recommendations, but very, very quickly, I think a main point I want to make is human rights, I think, are worthless if the custodians of those rights are not willing to defend them. And a case in point, I mentioned Yemen and that horrible bombing, school bus bombing about a month ago where well over a dozen children were killed. And, you know, it saddens me that I come up from a country which is a humanitarian actor and which has a very, very strong voice and strong respect around the world, but it pretty much remained silent during that whole tragedy. And a big reason is that not only is Canada right now kind of recovering from a very bad diplomatic spat with the Saudis, who are leading the coalition that dropped that bomb, but also I think that, you know, when they weighed whether we speak out or whether we protect our relationship with Saudi Arabia, where we're selling armored vehicles to, sadly, the Canadian government went more on the commercial side. And I can also say, having worked with UNICEF, there were UNICEF backpacks in the photographs of those injured and dead children. UNICEF, which is the main spokesperson for speaking out on women's and children's rights, remained basically silent on that one as well. I was very, very disappointed, and I called them out in my writing about that. So I think I'll leave it at that. I know I hopped around a little bit here and there, but that's basically me, and I will have a few points to say about perhaps some priorities the organization may want to focus on going forward.
Good, fantastic. Thank you very much for your contribution and for all the work that you're doing, because I do believe that's very important.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is, I need my list because I know I still have some of our speakers. I would like to invite Mam Yvonne to speak. So where are you? You have to unmute you.
Greetings from sunny Africa, and thank you so much, Ingun, for your vision, for bringing us together. And my name is Yvonne Bisisiwa Kgame. I was born in South Africa, so I was raised by a village. And what I value is the power of story, because I have seen stories are changing lives. Whatever values, whatever character that built me came from great women. And one of them is Angie. Great women who worked in unity, who knew who they are and where they come from. And they were very clear about their agenda, what needs to be done. So when I look at history, that's what empowered me, those stories from the campfire, or stories that I learned as a little girl, and that inspired me to follow a career in teaching. So I come from a teaching background, and from there I took the opportunity to grow and develop myself from the classroom to publishing, from publishing to broadcasting. And I've had this valuable opportunity to chair the board of human rights. So that gave me so much insight as to what is it that we can do, not only to have constitutions and policies, but to come alive, to take action, to make our rights live. And what keeps me sleepless at night is the rate of suicide in our country. And I'm asking myself that in a free country, what has happened? Why are we losing the will to live? Why is there no zest to be alive? What is not in place? And that makes me also look back at history, that at the time when I didn't have bread and butter, not even the kind of shoes, sometimes walking barefoot, what is it that gave me that enthusiasm and that desire and the commitment that there will be a brighter future? There will be change. So what I really am grateful about is what the female wave of change stands for, which is that call to say, as women, can we not only know our rights, but can we take action and make our rights live? And when we do that, can we believe in those rights and believe in ourselves? And let's not do it in silos. Can we unite so we can break through? And part of what made me who I am, I was lifted by women. Someone took me from the classroom at Macmillan Publishers, that was a Gail Parkins, and saw something extraordinary in me, and that touched me because I was raw. Even in restaurants, I got so scared to order pastas and all of that because I was just used from pap and spinach and all of that. But all I am saying is that where I come from, the story says there is power in women. And when we lift each other up, when we have a clear agenda, when we take action, but also when we know what we value, because when you believe in something, you also need conviction. So I am saying that evidence for me was to see women from grassroots taking a stand and changing lives. The person who I can remember here in South Africa, who I valued so much, who died last year, is Mam Emma Mashinini. She's the founder of the trade union in South Africa, COSATU. She was working in a clothing factory. And as a woman, she realized that I need to do something. I need to start something that can not only empower women, but empower everyone else. So I'm a believer that, yes, there's his story, but we've got the power to change the script and write our story and restore hope and be those images and voices of hope that will make someone feel that there's a brighter future. Because otherwise we have all these things that are written and that are material, but they're not going to help us. Like when you look at our country, the life expectancy is decreasing. Women are dying much younger. Things that used to be cured are now a problem, like tuberculosis. So in short, what I do value is education and health, because that is the strength and wealth of every nation. And I believe in the power of story, that it not only does it heal, not only does it inspire action, but it also make us discover those hidden treasures. We have the power. We are amazing. And as women, we can create a new story and change history.
Wow, thank you so much, Mom Yvonne. You always have this way of telling a story that really touches your heart. It's amazing. Thank you so much, and thank you for who you are and being part of the Female Wave of Change Circle of Wise Women. We really value that. Okay, thank you. We're going to the US, to Hanadi. Only just met a couple of weeks ago, but we had an amazing conversation, and I would love to you to share your story. The floor is yours.
Sure. So hi, my name is Hanadi Chehabeddine. I'm a public speaker and Muslim matter advocate living here in the US. I have been in the US for about 10 years, and when I arrived to the US, my husband and I had consecutive pregnancies. So I got to watch TV more than I really want to. And I saw how Islam is being talked about in the media. I saw how every time I'm watching what is being an unfortunate event, there isn't a voice that represents me. There isn't somebody that is speaking on my behalf that I can say, even though there are unfortunate events that are happening in the name of a religion of Islam, there isn't somebody that is speaking up and saying this is not actually Islamic. So I started reaching out to a very small community of moms that I used to attend baby classes with, and just tell them, hey, I'm a Muslim, I'm a committed Muslim, I know a couple of things. If you start feeling like you're harboring hate in your heart, if you start feeling like you're uncomfortable with Muslims, just reach out to me and we can have a talk about this. And at the time, I didn't think much of it. I just did it because I love my religion, and I have a background in advertising, in branding. And for me, it was the mission of rebranding my faith. So I joined a local nonprofit, started speaking in schools, community centers, and churches about Islam from the perspective of a Muslim. In 2016, when I saw that presidential candidates here in the US started literally riding on the back of Muslims for popularity, and again, not having that voice, I felt that I needed to take my work to the next level. As it was specifically after an incident. I was having a haircut at the local hairdresser, and I saw two of the clients just, blasting Muslims and Islamic practices and talking about Sharia law. And, in that moment, I wanted my interaction to actually do something different, do something that is not just something that goes viral for a bad reason. And I reached out to the person that was talking, and I said, do you have a Muslim friend? Do you have a source that you reach out to? Where did you get your information from? And I just held her accountable. I told her, we need to be more informed in our conversations. We need to be part of the solution. We cannot be part of the problems anymore. So anyway, she never called me. I invited her over for a cup of coffee so we can chat. She never reached out to me. But I was so frustrated, I wrote about my experience and published it on Facebook. And it went viral. So that gave me hope. That gave me a sense that people are willing to listen. So I started my company. I also forgot to tell you that the efforts that I was doing in my community earned me the Human Rights Award from the city of Eden Prairie, specifically for dismantling misconceptions and building bridges of unity. I cannot explain to you the negative narrative in the mainstream media, how it affects Muslims on their daily basis, every single day, and how it's being translated in school grounds, and chilling stories that you would hear from Muslim kids that go to school and are being called names and being physically and verbally attacked. Today I have my own company. I framed my education under diversity and inclusion. So I do not talk about the religion itself. I talk about Muslims. I talk about how the religion is enacted in the lives of people, and how I talk about the intersection, which is where the larger community comes across Muslims. And I've been a speaker in national women conferences. I do believe that with the power of stories, we can become more connected. We can eliminate the barriers. My main focus is to also clarify some of the cultural misconception as opposed to religious misconceptions. Culture and religion merge on many levels, and a lot of people do not know which is what. So it's been an amazing journey. I see lives being transformed. I see faces of people transform the minute they walk into a room and the minute they leave. I cannot be more happy to join the female wave of change and to join, this amazing panel of women, and hoping to take the work further and advocate for women everywhere.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I know just by looking at you and seeing the smile on your face, you know, you touch hearts. You know, I can imagine that people just want to listen to you. So that's very good, very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, well, last but not least, oh no, we have two more. I want to go to, again, the United States, but, you know, she's very global personality. Our global ambassador, Bisila, Bokoko. Where are you, Bisila? Here you are. Yes, the floor is yours.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, wherever you are. I just want to thank Ingun so much for the pleasure for me to be here today. I was born in Spain from African parents, and I live in New York in the US for about 18 years. And I'm so passionate about human rights because the reason why I choose to study law, it was exactly for that reason. My father gave me the biography of Benazir Bhutto when I was about 13, 14 years old, and that inspired me to really be an advocate for human rights. One of my dreams was to work at the UN or do something, but when I was studying international relations, I realized that sometimes you could achieve more when you work close, hand by hand with people. So one of the areas that I really, really think that women, we have been struggling through the years is being in an economic empowerment. That's the reason why I decided to really focus on that. And I work closely with the UNTAC. I started in 2010, being an entrepreneur myself and helping companies to market themselves through the world. One story really impacted me was a woman from Uganda. And we were at the awards in Geneva, and she was explaining when she got an award for entrepreneurship award. And she inspired me because she mentioned that the inherited rights in Uganda, they were not allow women to own land, and how her father was really instrumental to give her a piece of land and have a school in Uganda. And she made the first school in Uganda back in 2010. Today she has a university, and she go so far from what people expected from her in the community. The community was completely against her because it was the first time in her rural village that someone inherited land because it was not allowed. And ever since that time, I've been extremely involved to really work helping women to become entrepreneurs, because I believe the freedom of financial freedom give you also the opportunity to really empower your community. You're going to be a better mother. You're going to be a better person just by the fact that you could really do something for your children, that you're going to make a choice when it comes to education, when it comes to healthcare. Another of the projects that I've been involved that I was really passionate about, it was in Kenya, working with the Maasai women. And what I did, it was to involve companies from Spain to create a product in Africa and being able to create employment for women. And I witnessed firsthand the amount of joy and dignity that to be involved in a project that you know that it's part of the community, and in this community in particular that is very male-driven, and a lot of these women are part of a polygamous families, and the women sometimes they don't have access to money, and some of them it was the first time that they saw money with their own hands in the middle of the savannah. And be part of this product, making footwear for this company, and see that this footwear impacts the world, and it was all over the world. It was such a moment of pride and joy for all of them. And we started working with 300 women. We ended up with about 3,000 from Kenya and Tanzania. And this was one of the projects that really helped me to understand what other people is going through and how economic empowerment could really change lives, and also becomes a way of freedom. And also these men started to really cooperate more with them and respect them more. When they realized that the women were bringing money in the community, men sometimes they start helping them to take the children to school. The relationship between them is improved. So this has been a little bit of my involvement. Also in Equatorial Guinea, we work in a project called Ideal Women, helping girls to really not rely in selling themselves in the streets, trying to find that someone who comes from Europe takes them out and make a life better. and really to start thinking how the education could impact them. And they don't really need to use their bodies like a vehicle to do their lives. So a lot of these young girls, the only way that they see through is if they meet someone in politics or someone in the government who could really pay them, and they're just concerned about how they're gonna get away from the country, and they're just trying to find an angel that give them money. And they don't really think how they really could help and impact the communities and don't have to use that vehicle in order to make a life. So it's a project that we've been working for 3 years, empowering young girls and also young male, because I do believe that empowering women and men is actually the same. We are the mothers of these boys, so we also have to empower them. And to involve men, I have here from all of you that all of you pretty much you have so many in your lives that also has impact your life, and it also helped you to move through, and we've been working with them closely. And I think the key is education, and in the 21st century we really need to rethink about what is human rights. As we all know, it was in 1948 when this was written, but now it's changing. The world is changing. We're living in a digital area. All of us, we could be involved in different ways. Before, we rely only in the institutions and all the NGOs, but today, human rights is all us who has to be involved. It doesn't matter at what level. It's something that concerns all of us. And because we are in this era of transparency, of being able to connect with the whole world, we have to use these platforms and really speak up. So it's not in charge of the institutions, it's all of us. Starting at home, we need to really think about what can we do to really impact the world, and just through human rights, because human rights is all of us. It's not only women, it's not only people with disabilities, it's not only refugees, it's all of us. It's a concern for all of us, and I think we need to take charge. And I couldn't be happier that we are all here today speaking about this. I thank you, Ingun, because of these initiatives that you have. And using actually the power of technology, we are able to communicate, all of us today, and share our experiences, our stories. And I'm gonna let it right here, and I'm grateful to be here.
Thank you very much, Bisila. It's always good to see you and fly all over the world and you know, reaching out to so many people. So thank you for that, and thank you for being part of the female wave of change in this matter. Thank you. Now, last but not least, I'm going to Sweden. Tara, please introduce yourself.
Hello, let me see if I can make this work. All right, do you have me?
Yes, we do.
So welcome and hello from dark, rainy Sweden. A little bit of background, I am American. I grew up in cowboy country, so a very rural conservative background. And in my previous life, I had a bachelor's degree, or I have, in psychology. And I was a counselor and then a manager for a juvenile correctional facility for teenage girls. I left that position understanding that the complexities of the female position, and a forced choice is not a choice. A 14-year-old does not wake up and choose to be a meth addict. Other circumstances led to that. A woman does not prostitute herself generally by choice. Usually she needs to eat or take care of her kids. And these are things that are very much forgotten about. And I understood that the only way to really help people was through organizations. And what I saw generally is that activists would have a passion and they would go to do something, but they don't necessarily know how to do it. They don't have the skills to run that organization. So I got 2 master's degrees, organizational leadership and international studies, emphasizing women and gender studies, which led me to Kazakhstan. Supposed to be there for 6 months. 5.5 years later, I left with a husband and 2 kids in tow. And there I became a development advisor. I worked with everything from little tiny NGOs that was run by a babushka to universities to a national NGO that now works in all 5 Central Asian states, including Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan. And some examples of the work that we've done, one organization that I worked with called Zeta Yagaj, they work with women in prisons. And in that area, you're low on this totem pole if you're a woman. If you're a woman going to prison, you lost everything. You lost your network, you lost your family. You're not going to get employed. You have no rights, no standing in the community. And at that time, the women in the prison, 69% of them were there for killing their abusers. So can you imagine the level of domestic violence if that many women had to go to that point? And nobody was going in. The woman running that organization talked about going into the prison, and there was a gal dragging herself across the floor. She needed a wheelchair and they didn't have one. So her way to get around was crawl. No soap, no shampoo, no medical services. So her organization was bringing services into the prison, but they were also providing a shelter for these women when they came out because their families weren't going to take them back. And one thing that she had going is that she wanted to run a small shop, a workshop, teaching them how to sew and how to run a business. But she didn't have the startup funding. She didn't know how to write a grant. And so that's where I came in. And I helped her write the grant. I helped her get the business plan. And that first small $5,000 grant got her the next gig and the next gig. So she was able to continue her work. So some of my work is just with those one person who said, we need to fix this. They don't know how to fix it, but we need to fix it. And that's what it takes to make that change. I worked with larger organizations. The main one that I work with, when I met them, they were at a national level, just surviving on fee-for-services. Now they work in all 5 Central Asian states. And their work is they help smaller organizations work better. And so on a micro level, some examples of what they've done, we'll look at Tajikistan, where there is a really bad issue. The economy is very bad. Poverty is very, very high. And so husbands are leaving. The men are leaving to work with the intention to repatriate the funds, to send the money home. Well, that money doesn't always come home. There was an issue and they had to change the law because they were actually divorcing the wives over SMS. And so these women were left with very large families, no education, no income, still in a very bad economy. And so what my organization, Argo, did is they trained some smaller organizations who then went in and they created self-help groups for these women. They brought the women together. They taught them how to run a business. How do you gather fruit and sell it? And so these self-help groups these women are making money. They're surviving. And then the communities and the local governments are getting respect for these women. And they're having social contracts. They're creating contracts with, and these ladies work at the bottom of the totem pole. The government nobody was gonna make a contract with them. But because of the help of the organizations, because they've proven themselves, they keep moving up and up. And then we all know that has the wave effect. This also, we help on the macro level, the large level. So one thing that Argo has been doing is they quietly knock on the door. The democracy in the area is still developing. And instead of creating this revolution and this big noise, which is just going to be slammed down in a country like that, it's quietly just knocking on the door, quietly, and they've made changes. So again, back to Tajikistan, the Committee for Women and Families Affairs understand that helping women is good. And they have understood that they need to help the organizations be able to function. And so they've changed some of the regulations so it's easier for the NGOs to operate and it's easier for them to report. So because these organizations can function, they can now serve and help their constituents. And this isn't a threat against the government, it's positive. So what am I seeing? I'm seeing movement, I'm seeing potential. Yeah, there's some bad things happening. Yes, people are, rights are being shut down all over the world right now. People are afraid of civic space. They're afraid of the impact of social media and people coming together. Businesses and the governments are being held accountable, but there's movement. And once there's a balance that gets worked out, there will be change. And events like this, we're not alone. Us leaders are not alone. We're actually able to come together now and talk. And either if it's inspiring and emotional support or strategizing and moving ahead. So things are changing.
Okay, well, thank you, Tara. You've lived in a very special part of the world, and it's very good that you talk about it. And there's I love to have other women also here in the call that are from that area. And I thank you very much for the work that you do and what you have done. So it's very good to hear. Well, we've heard all our speakers, and it's very empowering. And you know, we've run, you know, way out of time because we plan to do this a lot shorter. But I do believe that these stories are, you know, they need to be told. And I totally agree with Mom Yvonne and the Wermer who mentioned storytelling. Storytelling is really something that is so powerful in getting the message and to inspire people and to strengthen them and to uplift them. And, you know, I've heard so many words. Thank you very much for that. If you look at the female wave of change and the purpose of the female wave of change, then, and I'm just going to read it, it's a global movement that unites women changing the world into a better place. Women from all walks of life who take responsibility of our own future, the future of the next generation and of the world. And doing so is, for us, it's very important that we use our feminine values and our feminine energy to change the world and to make it into a better place for each and every one. And I know that's a big goal, but there are ways that we can contribute. And we've heard some examples just now, and I really would like to hear some of you. And I saw some other people also on the call, and when we have time, I also would like to ask them to speak up. But I heard, for instance, mention Micheal, that he had some suggestions of how to do this. So I would like to start with you, Micheal. And please don't touch your camera because we would like to see you. I am going to unmute you, so don't touch anything. Okay. Unmute. Yes.
Right. We're here.
And we can still see you. Good.
Fantastic. Okay, I think I had been, oh, by the way, I really applaud the speakers, so wonderful and great storytellers. And I would be remiss if I didn't thank my dear friend Bisila. She is the one who introduced me to your great organization. So bisous to you. Couple of main points, and I think the first one is pretty self-evident to a lot of you, but this is really, really important point, especially as we're getting into the midterm elections in the United States, and that is run for politics, no matter at what level, on the municipal level, where a lot of policies affect women and children, but also on state, provincial, and federal levels. And I'm really heartened to see that a record number of females are running in the elections coming up in the United States. Why is that important? UNICEF and a lot of other organizations have done really deep studies, and what they show is in places as diverse as Rwanda, here in Canada, is that the more women in the national legislatures, the more child-friendly, women-friendly policies result. And also, it's not only legislation that evolves with more women involved, it's also more kind of subtle things. For example, here in the House of Commons, because there's a record number of female cabinet ministers, they've had to do things like expand daycare and access to other services that women need in order to do their jobs. Now, the other thing I wanted to say is that first ladies are very, very important as agents of change. And the reason I mention this is that I've done a lot of work for WHO and for the Pan American Health Organization. And the one thing there that has, for example, lifted immunization rates a lot is because first ladies have banded together to lean on legislatures, lean on their husbands who are in power to make these child-friendly and family-friendly policies happen. So that's a really important thing not to forget. Finally, my kind of main point, and it's a bit out of self-interest, is that I mentioned at the beginning that I'm working on a book on smartphone and social media addiction. This is what I'm going to be calling a global health crisis around the world, where smartphone use is really, really kind of hijacking the minds of a lot of young children, distracting them, affecting their studies, affecting their sleep, affecting their social interactions. But on the flip side of the coin, there are a lot of countries in the world which is on the other side of what we call the digital divide. I'm thinking of places like Burundi. I'm thinking of places, parts of Ghana, northern Vietnam, places like that. And the numbers are quite staggering in terms of how many kids are not connected. Something like 346 million youth are not connected to the internet, and around 3 out of 5 youth in Africa are offline compared to just 1 in 25 in Europe. So what I'd like to see happen is perhaps some kind of movement to perhaps hold the telecommunications providers accountable, hold the manufacturers of smartphones accountable, get them to invest money on getting these kids connected in one way or the other, because you know, a lot of kids in many parts of the world have what's called a secondary browsing experience. In other words, they can go on the internet, but most of the information there is in English, so they're not able to understand it if they don't speak English. Really important point to get more content translated into their languages. But anyway, but the main point here is, I want to take up more of your time, is to think up of ideas, and I'm happy to stay engaged with you on this, to get those hundreds of millions of kids connected so that they can expand their horizons, their networks, their educations, their social networks. One thing we found, for example, is, you won't be surprised to hear this, but for example, kids in South Africa who have just got onto the internet, they have been victims of bullying, for example, but they can also get onto online networks where they can get support from people who know how to deal with this, and also depression as well. There's a lot of online forums where kids can go to deal with that. So that's why it's really important for them to be connected, but of course not to the point where they're addicted to the devices or to the internet.
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, well, you know, we love that the whole internet connection and all these smartphones. And I know people right now, they're all using their computers, but also smartphones to join us. So I do agree. It's, you know, there is this extent of, you know, how much you use it. And I love to be able to use all these internets to reach out to the whole world and to connect. And that's very important. I hear you. Run for politics at all levels, be the agents of change, child and family friendly policies, and you know, that smartphone, you know, and totally agree. I love to hear Mom Angie. Please, can you share what you think that we should be able to contribute when using our feminine values and our feminine energy?
Thank you, Ingun. You know, I was very inspired by Micheal, and he's given me the courage to get my sons involved in the female wave of change. Because when we get the younger generation involved, what we are saying is human rights is cool, you know? And they then motivate the rest of the younger generation. And then also, Micheal, you talked about the importance of the First Lady. And I'm sitting here thinking, now, I'm fortunate because there's 3 of us in South Africa. There's Yvonne, there's Tebello, and myself. And we have a First Lady who is also a medical doctor. Now, I would like to see the Office on the Rights of the Child in the presidency, because under President Nelson Mandela, that's where children's rights got the best focus and attention, because it was in the presidency.
Absolutely.
So I would like to mobilize the ladies here so that we go, and it will be easier to see the First Lady than it is to see the president. And then the internet connectivity. Yeah, so very, very inspiring ideas. And then Yvonne, we need to talk about healing. We really need to focus on healing. Healing from the past, from the wounds of the past. We have a lot of walking wounded people all over the world. And a person that is wounded will always look for opportunities to wound others. Because why is it that we have such violent communities, such violent men towards women? We need to sit and talk about it. So yeah, so those are the few ideas that I'm mulling through my head, but I'm actually getting very excited.
Thank you, Mama Angie, for all your wisdom that you want to share tonight. Okay, I have someone who really wants to share something, and she has not been speaking yet, but she is really a human rights activist or minded, and that's Saskia. Saskia is one of our female Wave of Change ambassadors, and she asked if she could react to one of the speakers. So please do before we continue with the others. Saskia. Yes, you're unmuted.
Okay, one question which is really preoccupying me is, and that is a reaction to what Micheal said, to what extent can we really change the order of things if we become part of the institutions that have created the problems? That is really something that preoccupies me, and that's why I very much believe in movements starting up from citizens, joining hands and rebuilding institutions. And I hope Marina has the time to tell something about it, because we are doing that in Macedonia. And I have lost faith in our political and economic institutions, to be honest.
Okay, Micheal.
Sure. Yeah, I have a strong opinion on that. Good point. Listen, as you may have gathered, I've worked in these big organizations, UNICEF, OSCE, and a big reason I'm not working there anymore and that I'm an independent global affairs analyst is because I can speak out. I mentioned that story, the horrible story out of Yemen and the bombing of those children. And because I write for CNN, I was able to name the executive director of UNICEF, call her out and say, you said nothing, or you said almost nothing on this, how horrible. So of course, not everyone can do that. It takes time to get up to a platform where you can see things like that. But I'll mention a couple of points here. And one is that, a lot of people throughout my career have come up to me, a lot of young people, and said, how can I get into the UN, or how can I get into the OSCE? And you know what? Don't be obsessed with that. Because of platforms like Kickstarter, for example, these crowdfunding websites, you can start your own organization, your own NGO, and make a difference. The other thing I'll say is that look out for what I call springboards to action. And I'll give you a concrete example. I'm a volunteer mentor editor for a New York organization called the Op-Ed Project. The Op-Ed Project, you can Google it. And what they do is they work primarily with females who have something to say, who have a point to make, and we mentor them to be able to write opinion pieces that can go into the Washington Post or CNN.com or Huffington Post. So it's a very, a lot of what they do is free. They give a lot of advice online, but I can't overemphasize how important it is to get your points, your voices heard in mainstream media, because as someone like Bisila will tell you, is that these are springboards to getting invited to speak at conferences, getting invited onto boards of directors as well. So that little thing, getting your op-ed in, can lead to a lot of amazing things.
Thank you. And I think, and Saskia also knows that, what Female Wave of Change is all about is, we always say, stop fighting the old but create the new. And that's also, if you look at this thing. Saskia, is this enough? Is this what you wanted to hear, or?
Yeah, it's enough. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I know that, for instance, Narges, do you have any suggestions of what we could do to contribute? Wait, I have to unmute you. Yes.
Okay, there we go. Great question. So I love, when we first spoke, Ingun, I loved how you talked about the importance of local. Mm-hmm. So I think it's so good to have vision and to see an issue or cause from the distance. So see the whole picture, have a vision for it, be passionate about it, but then working on a local level, you can see immediate change. And when you see things change, it's inspiring to you to keep going. So one way is, of course, to volunteer. At my lowest level in my life, when I was unemployed, because in January 2010, I was pregnant, I was broke, I was unemployed. I couldn't even get a minimum wage job, so I had to start my own company, and that led to everything that I do today. But I'm sharing that because one thing I kept doing was volunteering. There wasn't a month that passed when I didn't volunteer for something. And I think that volunteering is such an important part of my lifeblood, and it helps everyone. It helps everyone really make a difference. You can volunteer in your community for a cause you care about. And then there's really making donations. I know we haven't talked about that, but there are so many organizations in the world right now, especially on a local level, that need our help. And I'm very fortunate that my business has been very successful, and I'm a sponsor and a donor for the organization I'm on the board for, which is Dixon. There's donations in kind you can make. So there are 3 powerful ways, but there's also doing one thing I do, which is being an active advocate on social media. I know, Ingun, you've mentioned that. Many of the speakers have mentioned that. I loved what Micheal said. I really believe you need to have the skills to be heard and to have your voice heard. I absolutely agree with him. You need to be able to speak up. So there's not a single speech I've given that I haven't mentioned a cause I believe in. I use my platform. I write about things. I speak about them. I share them on social media. And I don't worry about the hate that I get back, because it is important that we're out there, we're pushing the boundaries. Because when you have a platform, I think you have a responsibility to use it. And I think that's probably the most powerful way, because I looked up many of our speakers and many of the people who are participating and listening. Everyone has their own circle of influence. So speak up and really be involved in the process, whether it's on a local level or it's on a global level through social media.
Thank you very much. Yes, and you're going to help us with that, I hope.
Yes.
We're very happy that you really want to get involved. Last Saturday you had a meeting with Renee. She's traveling.
Yes, it was awesome.
Board members, and she's traveling to the United States and Canada right now, and you had a chance to meet in Vancouver, so that was very good. Okay, well, thank you very much. It's right now, and Shad, our ambassador in Pakistan, she's already tweeting. She said, "Can I use these, all these great quotes to already share something on the social media?" So she's our great tweeter. So Shad, do you want to share something? What is your suggestion we should do?
Yeah, I was muted. I muted myself. Okay. So thank you, Ingun. Very good suggestions are coming, and I'm so happy Fuel Waves of Change is now growing more, having this good diversity now from around the world. When Narges was speaking about her own story, that there was a difficult time in her life and how she actually was able to deal with that difficult time, and today where she is, I'm actually emphasizing on this because the region I'm actually working in, women actually in a very difficult situation, they start doing, and they initiate in a very critical time. And most of the time, they face a lot of challenges and problems. And we are always looking for success stories. We're not looking for the women. They have faced some situation, and because of that situation, they couldn't actually, continue their efforts. So we, from the Female Waves of Change, we need to start looking for those stories as well, to giving this courage to people to speak about their failures as well. We should not only mention that, this is the success, the achievement. We need to share where we couldn't actually, made it actually. Because there are many, even my story of the struggle, there are many times in Pakistan where, even the 2 big occasions where I completely stopped working, but I was fighting So always when I come to the forums, we're speaking, okay, we have made this, but I want to speak about the challenging time, the critical thing. And this is how actually we will be able to giving, the platform and courage to girls and women to come and speak up. Because this is not about because they're weak or they don't have the knowledge to deal with. That is the situation is critical they're facing. So this one thing. And another suggestion I recently tweeted about, when we say female waves of change, when we say feminism, so a lot of people they interpret this like this female waves of change are only about female, or feminism is only about female. So we need to change actually this discourse as well, that feminism is not only about women. Feminism is actually standing up for what is right, what is not good for anyone in the world, even men, even the minorities, the children. So I would say, like, using the platform of the female waves of change, we need to initiate debates on these particular things where people have stereotypes. No, they have stereotyped all these things, and this is why when you go enter, so there is a block. People say, okay, feminism, okay, keep this away. This is not for us. So I would say we need to have some curriculum, we need to have some discussions, and then we need to bring forward them again, going to Micheal. He mentioned about the smartphone. In my village, a lot of people, they would not have a proper house, but they have many smartphones in their house. So we need to access them now, giving them this knowledge in their doors, in their homes, because they're already having access, but they're not having the access to the right knowledge, to the right information. So we need to be there. The female waves of change, we all women need to come together and share this story information with the upcoming generation, the children, that they need to learn about these values, and they need to help us to spread these feminine values, even information about the human rights. And one last comment again, this is another, before this event, you mentioned about the Human Rights Declaration. Lots of people, they're not aware about what actually human rights, this human rights, UDHR, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, is all about. And so a lot of people, they're not aware, and they don't, like when they are not aware, so they are always kind of requesting. So when this is about your rights, so you're not requesting, actually, you are claiming, there are institutions, they're accountable for these things. So we need to do something with that as well from this forum, that the conventions, those are relevant, those are important. We need to spread information about them, that why they're important and why everyone must stay with them and must talk about them, because a lot of laws are coming, policies are coming, and the policies we had before, they are just, they're going, down on those papers, and we're just forgetting them. So thank you for the reminder today, Ingun.
Thank you, Shad. And thank you for spreading the word in Pakistan and all over the world on Facebook and Twitter. And okay, I'm going to Bisila. Any suggestions? There's already so much being said, but you probably have something to add to this list.
Well, not that much. Actually, I will just like to support one of the ideas that Micheal said about more women being involved in politics. And I do believe also that some of the institutions, is true, they very much not into attunement with who we are today, and it needs change. But if we're not part of the system, we could not really change things. And my experience last week, when we have this female wave of change event in New York City, having women that they really, because of the situation, the current political climate in the United States, they really woke up and they said, we need to speak up, because this is not representing me today. This is not the voice that I want that speak for me. So they realized that they needed to speak. And some of these women were really homestay moms. They were part of the communities, but looking at the situation, they make a decision to really change things. And sometimes change is just one step and another step. And also because all of the other women, we're trying to help them and support them, because it's not something that you could do alone. And this is why I do believe that we need women supporting women, and of course the men support, but most of the women who go into politics is because they've been asked for. It's by invitation. Someone tells you, oh, you're such a good speaker, you have so much impact in the community, why you don't do this? But it's very difficult to get that confidence that we could do things. And I would like just a call to action to really, if that fire is inside of you and there is something in your community, something that you want to change, just do it. I mean, you're doing this just for you and for the people who are close to you. So it's not about I think women, we are so scared of failure because of relationship with failure. It's like, I'm lost. If I don't do things perfectly, then I'm not willing to go. And we always play to win, but sometimes we need to lose to win. So my only suggestion will be that if someone has that fire and wants to change something, speak up, try, do it, and you have all our support. That's what we're here for.
Thank you very much. It is very good that you mentioned the event in New York, because that was very much about the women power, especially women power in politics. And, you know, I do agree you have to be part of the system. And there's this great expression, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. So we need to be on the table, yeah, and just get another chair and make sure that you're part of the discussion. Also, if you don't like the system, we have to discuss it. Yeah. Okay. Hanadi.
So I would add, great suggestions, everyone. I would add one thing. On this panel of very powerful women globally, I believe in collaborating as a network and digging into each other's resources and expertise to empower each other. Say, if there is something that I can help anyone here, I would love to offer that kind of help. And in exchange, everyone just really empowering each other, because I believe each one of us in the country that they live in has her and his network of resources or people that they can have access to that can be of benefit of the other person. The other suggestion is on the personal level to do our part, even though, you know, fighting for something that is not directly affecting me is also my story, is also my concern, is also something that I should fight for. So doing our part in our own circle of network and collaborating with each other is definitely something that would benefit and would amplify our voices as female wave of change.
Thank you very much. We're running out of time and I'm going to Tara. Where are you?
I'm here.
Oh, I'm still here. Yeah.
Did you find me?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. The suggestions have been absolutely fabulous. One thing that, living in Sweden, I have, and having a Swedish husband, we're forgetting the men. We've said before that women's issues are human rights issues. Well, okay, domestic violence. We look at the woman. We give the resources to the woman. He's still there. That abuser is still there to go out and find another victim. If we're not looking at the whole picture, we're not fixing anything. So the suggestion is, my suggestion really is to look at the whole picture, not just the woman's problem, but it is the whole picture and addressing the entire thing that needs to be fixed. And that includes things in our own homes, gender roles. We need to let men in the kitchen. Sometimes we don't let them in. We need to let them take care of their own kids. It's a matter of pride. Are you saying they're not man enough to change a diaper? There is that discord, and we need to include everybody. This is not just a woman's problem. It's our problem. It's everyone's problem.
Mm-mm.
And that's my suggestion.
It's our issue. Yes, I totally agree. Thank you. Thank you very much. And it's good that more and more women are getting involved. So that's fantastic. I'm moving to South Africa in the room with Tebello and Mom Yvonne. Oh, wait, I have to unmute you. Yes.
Again, I want to concur on the wonderful suggestions that have been provided. I support the idea that for us to continue, we need to be sharing the stories and the successes and encouraging, the young women that are out there. I think there are so many of us, we have such wonderful stories to share, and there are so many young people, both boys and girls, that are waiting for somebody to just share their story with them. At our youth event, we had all these wonderful young and older people that shared their stories, and a lot of them walked away saying, can you please continue sharing these positive stories? Because in the communities where we are, particularly in our country, we don't get to see and hear these positive stories. So just by being here for an hour or 2 hours with you, I'm walking away with such a different way of thinking about my life. So I fully agree. I agree on that. And I think, and I've said this to you, Ingun and the team, is that on the platform for Female Wave of Change, we need to start sharing our stories. We need to start sharing stories of women that we know of, whether they are members of Female Wave of Change or not. But I think by continuing to do that, we get to be seen as a network of women that, yes, understands the challenges of the world, but it's also saying, hey, there are others out there that have managed to make it, and these are their stories, and that's how we can be able to grow the network. So I'm inspired. And lastly, I think, in our country, everybody keeps talking about the youth, and I'm like, why are we starting to behave as if those who have been there before us don't have stories to share? Because if I think of the older women in our country and the kind of struggles that they managed to survive, and more importantly, in surviving those struggles, they've then been able to educate their children, to get to their children to a better life. And now we also wanting to behave as if they don't have stories to share. I think, and I'm privileged now, of course, with Mami Yvonne and Angie, and the history that they have and the value and the information that they have that we can be able to use to even help these young ones. So I think even people that are in their 50s and 60s and 70s, we also need to reach out to them, because they could also be able to encourage us as we go through the struggles, because their struggles were even worse than our struggles today, but they made it. Over to you, Ma.
Yes. I agree, absolutely. I think this has been a very enriching and an awakening evening, and I value everything that has been shared. But I'd like to emphasize on just making people aware and reminding them that they have freedom of expression. We're born free, we're born equal, and we deserve the same rights like everybody else. And I can not overemphasize as well the idea of dealing with inner healing, because we cannot give what we don't have. And how do we do it as women? Let us tackle and challenge and dissolve the premise of slavery that taught us self-hate, being a victim, dependency, and working in silos. And how do we turn it around? Let's come from love. When you love yourself, when you believe yourself, when you care about the next person, like loving your neighbor as you love yourself, there will be a shift there. But also value knowledge. Share and give people the skills so that we can contribute towards changing our attitudes, changing our thinking, changing our behavior, and doing things. I like us to inspire good citizenship. I've heard about the beautiful story of Rwanda, where they moved from genocide to greatness by doing a simple thing, keeping Rwanda clean. So let us encourage our young people, whether they are boys or girls, men and women, to take action, to do something, be accountable for their own freedom. And in that way, I think we're starting somewhere. And sometimes we complicate things because we want to do everything all at the same time. But when you look at the great stories that we've just been shared, simplicity is powerful. One thing at a time, and learn from each other. And I think whether we are male or female, young or adult, there are things that we need to unlearn. And there are things that worked well in the past that we have lost that we must relearn. And we should keep learning new things. So for me, innovation and creativity, just because I'm a product of seeing creativity in action. I've seen how people in the township used to take plastics from a supermarket and making table mats and all that. But I also support the idea that let us not ignore mental health. The last stats that I read in our country was that 1 in every 4 has a mental challenge. And let's not make it taboo and deal with things openly. In that way, we will shift consciousness and bring greatness alive.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And everyone, thank you very much. We are a little bit over time, but you know, I think we needed to do that. And I see things happening in the chat box, and I see things about mentorship, very important. I took note of it. It's the book that's being suggested that's already on our to-do list. So we will come back to that. If someone really would like to pick up that issue, would like to organize that book is being written of all these stories, that would really be great, because there's already a lot of our plates. But great suggestions, and you know, there will be more, and I see that Marina is raising her hand, and I'm sorry we don't have time. Marina is right now, together with Saskia, they're building a new corporation in Macedonia. Really great story to tell. They're making a movie right now that we are going to share in the Human Rights Week. So I'm going to pay a lot of attention to that, Marina. Thank you for that. And there will be more events the coming weeks, online and offline. So we'll post everything that we can to get as many people involved as possible. If you're not able to make it, we are taping it, we are recording it. So right after this meeting, I'm going to make sure that it will be online as fast as possible. So that's good, so that we can share it with more people. So at the end of September, after all these events, you know, you've heard about South Africa, you've heard about New York, and there will be more events locally. I'm not able to read so fast, so but there will be more events. And at the end of the month, there will be final statements from the Female Wave of Change, how we think that we can collaborate, and there will be a call to action on getting people involved on certain projects that we want to start. So if you want to get involved, please make sure that you follow us until the end of the month, and after that, of course, as well. So I would like to thank all of our speakers. It was really inspiring, and thank you so much for being here. Thank you for the listeners. Sonamita, I see Susan James from Toronto. I see other people who have joined us, and one more from Macedonia, Maya, and you know, there's so many interesting people here. Love to have you here and really spread the news, because you know, we are creating waves, and we want to create more waves so that we reach out to as many women as possible and make sure that our voices are heard. So thank you very much for all your wise words, and let's create some waves. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You.
Thank you.